Welcome to the NBAV podcast. Welcome back to NBAV, the NBA Avenue podcast, coming to you on a Tuesday, on a day when we're trying to understand what the heck happened in the NBA last night. A bunch of teams losing games that were really not what we thought would have happened. A bunch of teams squandering opportunities in the very close play-in and playoff races, both in the Eastern Conference and in the West. So what in the world is going on in the NBA, starting with the Cleveland Cavaliers beating the Indiana Pacers without Donovan Mitchell, without Mobley, without Max Strus. For Indiana, when you're hovering around the 6, 7, 8 range in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, and you have the best player in the game in Halliburton, you have a backup point guard in McConnell who's playing consistently well every single game in and game out, and you have Siakam, and you have just a whole array of athletic big bodies that you can send to completely take out of their game. How do you lose that one on your home court when you need the victory and Cleveland really does not? Cleveland's cemented that they're going to be a 3 or a 4 seed, at worst case a 5 seed. They're okay. If Cleveland plays well down the stretch here, they can even get to a 2 seed, but Cleveland doesn't really need the victories. The Pacers, however, off of that loss last night, they're in 7. They could have been in 6. The difference between 6 and 7 is the difference between going straight into the playoffs and having to play play-in games to get there. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to be playing play-in games if you can avoid it. And the Pacers have a golden opportunity at home against a short-handed Cleveland Cavaliers team, and they squander it. If you would take that Indiana team last night with all the athletic players that they have on the roster, right, starting with Nesmith, Siakam, Miles Turner, Halliburton, Obi Toppin, Jalen Smith. If you take all these guys and you would say, hey, Tibbs, call Tibbs over from the Knicks and say, Tibbs, you're the head coach of this Indiana team. They would have shut down Cleveland without Donovan Mitchell on the court. They would have had them score 70 points in the game last night. If you had to come up with an array of athletic basketball players to put on the team at the same time to give you top defensive effort and say, hey, we need to hold this team to 80 or less, the Pacers have that roster. How did the Pacers go out there and blow this one? And now they're going to reap what they sow because, hey, there's only about 14, 15 games left to go in the season. Now they're sitting in 7th. They're still behind the 76ers in 6th, and they still are hovering in that same range as the Miami Heat. So, Pacers, you just made it a whole lot tougher on yourself than it needed to be. This was a golden opportunity, playing the Cleveland Cavaliers at the right time. They haven't been playing well. They don't have their roster. They're missing their best player. They're missing a couple of other of their best players. And now you just squander that opportunity on your home floor in an embarrassing loss. I understand there's a little bit of discussion about, was Tyrese Halliburton injured? Was he healthy? Did he come back too early? It's hard to tell when you watch him. When I see him shoot, he looks like the same guy. So if there's an injury, you better let us know, or you better sit him out and get him right for these play-in/playoff games, because it's not worth having him out there as an inferior product and a poorer version of himself. Then you had the Celtics demolishing the Pistons, as we knew they would. The one consistent team in the NBA who you can rely on night after night after night are the Boston Celtics, and then perhaps maybe the Denver Nuggets in the West. Then you have an even more baffling loss. The Miami Heat go to Philadelphia, a team that's playing without their best player for the last 25 games in Joel Embiid. 25 games or so. I don't have the exact number, but they've won barely any of those games. They're so shorthanded, and you would think that the Heat would wake up. And I said that the Heat were guaranteed to win this game, and I cannot believe they didn't win it. They are right next to the Sixers in the standings. A victory would have pushed them above the Sixers. They could be in the 6th seed right now. They could be not needing to worry about playing games. Who wants to play extra games? You know what happened when the Heat made it all the way to the NBA Finals last year? Jimmy Butler wasn't himself by the end of it. And if he has to play play-in games and then play multiple 7-game series like he did last year, he's not going to make it as a healthy version of himself again. You need to get to the 6th seed if you want to preserve Jimmy Butler. And I understand that Jimmy Butler didn't play last night, but you have enough pieces. You had a whole lot more pieces than the 76ers. You have the Heat culture. What do the Sixers have without Joel Embiid? The trust the process culture, trust the process of playing without Embiid. That's what they've had to trust over the last several seasons. Trust that Embiid's not going to be on the floor. That's really what they've had. They don't have a culture. The 76ers just throw Tyrese Maxey out there, and he's playing alongside Kelly Oubre. Nick Batum had to play 38 minutes in that game. And he scored 2 points. He scored 2 points in 38 minutes. 1 assist. Mo Bamba played 19 minutes. Kyle Lowry played 35 minutes and then 24 from Hield, 22 from Paul Reed, 16 from Payne, and 7 from Kenyon Martin Jr. A pathetic lineup. Pathetic. The Miami Heat at least have Jaquez and Adebayo and Rozier and Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Patty Mills, Thomas Bryant, guys who have played in playoff series, and they know the meaning of these games and trying to get to the playoffs, and they squander it, and now the Sixers are back in front of them? Oh my goodness, what a terrible display from the Miami Heat, losing to Philly 98-91. Chicago Bulls handled the Trailblazers. And what we had is a headline story. I shouldn't say headline. It's a story. I wouldn't say it should catch headlines, but it caught my attention. Let me read this to you a little bit. DeAndre Ayton says slow start in Portland was in part due to him sleeping on an air mattress. This is an article published by NBC Sports by a guy named Kurt Helen. It was published yesterday at 1:16 p.m. DeAndre Ayton has been the gift that keeps on giving in terms of excuses. He missed a game this season because he claimed that he couldn't get to the arena because his area was surrounded by ice. I've never heard anyone come up with that excuse before. He missed a ton of time due to injury when he hasn't really been an injury-prone player for his career thus far. And now that the games are here that don't really matter because we know that the Trailblazers can't really go anywhere, and he starts putting up points, he's now offering excuses for what happened earlier in the season. Sleeping on an air mattress. The article itself says that as a 7-footer, he may not be ordering a standard mattress, but you can do a Google search, and with a credit card, you can have a mattress on your doorstep within 24 hours. The one who wrote the article says he literally has done that before. There's a huge industry built up around the shipping of mattresses. So for Ayton, a guy who's made tens of millions of dollars in his NBA career, to offer up an excuse that he is sleeping on an air mattress? I mean, are you out of your mind? You can't get a hotel room? You can't go to your friend's house? You can't order a mattress? You can't go to the store and get whatever mattress you want? The guy could be sleeping on a $5,000 mattress. He could be sleeping on a $20,000 mattress. And he's offering excuses. When you hear stuff like this, aside from the fact that he said that he only wanted to play, his goal was to get his second contract, that's a pretty low goal for a guy who was the first overall pick in the draft. Now he's traded to the Trailblazers, and the excuses he's come up with this season are, I couldn't play well because I was sleeping on an air mattress when you're literally a multimillionaire, and I couldn't make it to the arena because of ice. The Timberwolves beat the Jazz 114-104. Anthony Edwards had that awesome poster dunk where he basically poked John Collins in the face and then just yammed it on him. Timberwolves continuing to beat up on the lower teams in the NBA. And then you had the game of the night. The game of the night was the New York Knicks traveling to San Francisco, going to play the Warriors. And this was unbelievable. On back-to-back games, we've watched the New York Knicks go. And Jalen Brunson, on one night, outplays De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk on Sacramento, and then goes out the next game and outplays Steph Curry in San Francisco. Unbelievable. I didn't think that the Knicks were going to be able to win this game because I thought that OG's elbow was making it that he wasn't going to play his best on offense. And then it turns out he didn't even suit up for the game because his elbow flared up so badly. That's a very key loss. I mean, the Knicks hadn't done well in the games that OG Anunoby hadn't been there. I understand there were also games where Brunson was out and there were games where Hartenstein was out. And the Knicks have been missing players for a lot of time during the season. But missing OG Anunoby against the Warriors, who have played very, very well over the last 20, 30 games or so, and still beating them, that's incredible. And what was really surprising was the ease at which Brunson was able to score points in this game. Because the Warriors are a team that typically have a pretty good team defense. And they know how to rotate, and they know how to play as a team. But Brunson didn't struggle to score against anybody. Brunson was scoring against Andrew Wiggins. He was scoring against Kuminga. He was scoring against Curry. He was scoring on everybody. He put up 34 points in 35 minutes and then added 7 assists and 5 rebounds to that. What a game against Jalen Brunson, showing that he was the best player on the court last night. Steph Curry put up 27 points in about the same amount of time. Brunson scoring 34 and having more assists and more rebounds? Pretty impressive. And what a timely contribution did the Knicks get from Miles McBride last night, where he was the absolute best version of himself. Whoa, with 29 points. He played almost the entire game. He played literally 47 minutes, and you had a complete 48 minutes from Josh Hart. Incredible. Miles McBride played 47 minutes of that ball game, and Josh Hart played 48. A classic Tibbs game. Josh Hart, in the 48 minutes, he was felt in all aspects of the game. He got his 10 points, 11 assists, and 11 rebounds. He's rebounding the ball. He's jumping out of the gym. In the last 5-6 games or so, he's been unbelievable. He's been incredible. Dante DiVincenzo with his 18 points, showing Golden State that he continues to be a thorn in their side for giving up on him. But then again, would he have ever played as well as he is playing right now without his Villanova buddies? But getting back to Miles McBride, I mean, he was looking to shoot the basketball. But not only was he shooting the basketball at a super high clip, and he made like 6 out of his first 7 shots, but he also found Jalen Brunson on a couple of wide open three-pointers, which Brunson hit. And in a game where you're missing OG Anunoby, and OG typically brings on the offensive side the 3-point shot from the corner, so where OG's not playing, and then you're able to get Jalen Brunson getting those opportunities instead of him because McBride's able to find him off of him trying to create his own shot. What an incredible job by the New York Knicks, beating the Kings and then beating the Warriors on back-to-back games. This is really starting to change, and I tweeted this out last night. It's starting to change the way that I'm viewing the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, because for the longest time, the Western Conference has been known as the better conference than the East, and it still is. But you have New York going out there and beating the Kings and then beating the Warriors, 2 teams that played each other in a 7-game series last season in the playoffs. Known to be 2 of the better teams in the Western Conference, and the Knicks just dispose of them. Both of them, beating them pretty well. I mean, the games were close, but the Knicks handled business in both games. Not even at full strength. Jalen Brunson had so many different facets to his game. He had players he was able to create space stepping back. He was able to create space where he was driving in and then he would stop and the defenders would fly by him. The level of craftiness that he showed in the last couple of games is like nothing we see in the NBA. The level of craftiness that Jalen Brunson brings. And the Knicks fans have to be really, really, really happy to have that guy. Because you think that you're hitting the peak, and then the peak just keeps growing. The peak just keeps getting higher. As the Knicks maintain the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. Then we had the final 2 games of the night. The Kings took overtime to beat the Memphis Grizzlies, which you'd really like to see them win it outright in regulation, but they got back Desmond Bane. They had a very short rotation. The Grizzlies only had 8 guys suit up in the game. But all's well that ends well. The Kings got the victory. It took overtime, but hey. I guess the victory is all that matters. And then the Lakers were able to beat the Hawks by 31, which we expected. So going back to the standings, just to see how last night impacted things, it didn't impact the Eastern Conference in any meaningful way in terms of the top 5 seeds. It's still Celtics, Bucks, Cavs, Knicks, and Magic. But the Sixers with their victory last night and the Pacers and Heat losing, that means that the Sixers are now in 6, the Pacers are now in 7, and the Heat are in 8. So squandered opportunities from the Pacers and the Heat, and now they're going to have to really try to turn it up in the last 14, 15 games if they want to not have to play any play-in games. And it shouldn't really be that hard. Philadelphia shouldn't be able to win very many games, especially not against one of them, not against the Heat, not against Indy. But they did it last night, beating Miami last night. So then you have in the Western Conference, the Thunder still at 1, Nuggets and Timberwolves tied at 2-3, Clippers at 4, Pelicans still at 5. Then you have the Kings with their victory, they're at 6. And then just behind them in a tie, 7 and 8, you have the Mavericks and the Suns. Suns have a tough schedule the rest of the way. I'll actually be going to see them in person tomorrow night. So we'll be watching the Suns against the Philadelphia 76ers. So the Sixers are going to be traveling to Phoenix at Footprint Center. I'm going to get a good look at that one. We'll have my dad at the game as well, so maybe we'll bring on my dad after that game and we'll do a post-game show, a recap of the Phoenix Suns as we get a real up-close and personal look. The Suns desperately need victories, and so do the Philadelphia 76ers, but the Suns have a much better team, especially at the top of their roster. So you have to think that the Suns are going to win that game. And then the Lakers in 9, the Warriors in 10. Lakers 1 game up on the Warriors because the Lakers won last night and the Warriors lost to the New York Knicks. Now, in terms of the games that we have happening tonight, you have a great opportunity again for the Orlando Magic. They're playing the Charlotte Hornets. And they're playing in Orlando at home. So a great opportunity for the Magic to get another easy victory. Then you guys can all turn off your televisions. No need to watch the Houston Rockets against the Wizards. The Rockets are playing well right now. I believe they've won 5 in a row. So they should be able to figure out how to beat Washington, a team that struggles to win any game the entire season. But nobody's really going to have to watch that one. Rockets playing without Şengün. Wizards are Wizards. Then you have the Pelicans with another easy matchup against the Brooklyn Nets. So the Pelicans should be able to retain their spot in 5. And maybe even look to move up to the 4 seed, depending on what happens in the next few games for the Los Angeles Clippers. But another golden opportunity for the Pelicans. Then you have the Mavericks with an easy matchup against the Spurs. And then you have the only good game of the night is the Nuggets playing the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are going to bring their A game because they want that 1 seed. And the Nuggets are going to bring their A game because they want that same thing. The two teams are tied right now, so whichever team wins is going to be in the 2 spot. Well, actually, whichever team wins, because each of them are only a half game back of the Thunder. So the Timberwolves-Nuggets game, whoever wins that game is going to be in a tie for the 1 seed, and whoever loses that game is going to be in the 3 seed. So a little bit of regular season stakes tonight. Both teams are going to want it. What do we think is going to happen? I think that the Nuggets are going to win because Nuggets are 8-2 in their last 10. And the last game that they lost against Dallas was the Kyrie Irving buzzer beater. So the Nuggets have been one of the most consistent teams over the last 10, 20 games, really since the All-Star break. They've been one of the most consistent teams. They made a massive push to try and nab the 1 seed here at the end and set themselves up really nicely for the playoffs. Now, the game is in Minnesota, and Denver has a much better record at home than they do on the road. Denver lost 15 games on the road. They've only lost 6 games the entire season at home. So considering that Denver's on the road tonight in Minnesota, that does bode well for Minnesota, but Minnesota has the weaker team without Karl Anthony Towns. Now, we could see a great effort from Minnesota on defense like we always do, but considering that how consistent, the Nuggets have basically not lost since the All-Star break. They've only lost a game or 2. And even the games that they're losing, they're not getting blown out. They lost by literally an incredible once-in-a-lifetime buzzer beater from Kyrie Irving with the left hand running from the foul line. So if you're going to lose a game, that is definitely the way to lose it. So I would take Denver tonight. Denver to make a statement and go out there and nab that 1 seed, move into a tie with Oklahoma City. And that's the way I see that game going. As always, you can follow the show at NBAV, that's NBA Avenue, on all social media, and you can email the show at nbavenue@yahoo.com with your questions and comments. We're your source for a great time every time, and until next time, we are out.